Agrivoltaics is a hot topic here in upstate New York and around the country because we need renewable energy, but we don't necessarily want to cut down a bunch of forests or take up a lot of usable farmland to build solar panels. So this raises the question, can these things coexist? And I am not a farmer, but I live on a large rural lot in upstate New York, and we have this big residential solar installation out in this meadow, which, as you can see, is sort of a mix of vegetation of different heights. We have some woods in the background, some lower grasses, and then some kind of bushy, woody growth. So a few decades ago, this was farmland, and eventually house sold to somebody else. They stopped farming it, and it's kind of been regrowing. So I kind of have an interesting experiment running here showing what will grow under solar panels. It is maybe about 11 a.m. in early June here. So you can see everything under here is in complete shade. The stuff at the very front edge is getting some sunlight from the other side. And later in the day, as the sun sets sort of in that direction, even farther north at the peak in the summer, these will get some sunlight from the back. But for most of the day, it's in complete shade, and you see there's actually a lot growing under here. The other interesting part of this is these are installed on a slope, so the panels are much closer to the ground over on this end than they are on that end, which again kind of gives me another variable to look at if the vegetation is different depending on the height, because the higher it gets, and especially on the western end, that end gets more sunlight than this end. And I do need to come out here maybe a couple times a summer. I have been mowing or weed whacking because, as you can see, especially on this lower end, some of the vegetation does start to reach up to the underside of the panels, and there's all these wires here. I don't want vines wrapping around things and starting to pull the wires out. But otherwise, I really don't need to maintain this that much. I kind of just let all the stuff grow. So if you were worried about installing panels and needing to mow under them constantly, or pave or put gravel and tarp down or something, as long as they're high enough off the ground, my take is that it's kind of fine to just let this grow. I thought about getting out. I have a plant ID app on my phone, so I could have gone through here and identified all the different species of plants that are growing. I am too lazy to do that for this video. I may do it in a future one if there's enough interest, but for now I just thought I'd just sort of give you a tour of, again, this end that's a little higher and has more sunlight, has a lot of grassy looking stuff. So this is kind of what your yard will look like if you just don't mow your regular grass. And then as we get up to the shorter end, we start kind of seeing some more vegetation. Again, I don't know what this stuff is. I forget the name. It looks like milkweed, but it's not. Milkweed being the stuff that monarch butterflies eat. We've got some of these yellow flowers. Here are the vines I was talking about. You can see how that's all twisted. So this is what I have to worry about the most if it starts going up the posts and grabbing onto the wires. Don't really want that to happen. Some of this stuff with the little white flowers, whatever that is. And you see it does start getting a little more sparse as I get up here. There's kind of some muddy patches in there where nothing is growing from me coming out and kind of mowing and weed whacking last year. That hasn't come back yet, but again, it's early June. I will probably continue this series throughout July and August for the summer. The whole growing season isn't that long here because I'm pretty far north, but that does sort of fill in throughout the rest of the summer. So again, up here, here's some more of this vine stuff, some more of this milkweedish stuff, some other things there. So definitely less grassy on this end compared to the other end, but plenty of things growing in there, and even some woody growth kind of established as well. So there's this little bush kind of growing right up against the post there that I didn't manage to get with the weed whacker or mower. So I'm curious, if I let that grow long enough, if this would start to become kind of like the more overgrown parts of the meadow where there's woody growth and not just grasses. And again, if I flip around to the front side here, you'll see I am going to need to come here and start weed whacking along the front edge, because some things are getting tall enough to shade the panels. Now the shade from those tiny little leaves is kind of negligible compared to the size of this array, but I don't want that whole bottom edge to start getting covered as that stuff gets taller throughout the year. So there you go. Again, informal tour if you were curious what grows under solar panels. If you Googled that and found this video, that's probably why you're watching it. What I might do again in the future is see if I can plant tomatoes or something under this thing? You know, actually more of an home DIY agrivoltaics standpoint. Are there any garden plants I can plant that will actually get enough afternoon sunlight in the growing season to grow sufficiently under here? But for now, if you have a comment or some thoughts on this, if you've tried it yourself, or again, if you're a plant whiz and you want to identify some of the plant species you saw in here, go ahead and leave a comment below this video. Thank you.